Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast. SANS Protects the Network, sponsored by Airgap, Corelight, and Threat Blocker. My name is Carol Auth of SANS. Today's featured speakers are Matt Bromley, Solutions Engineer and Analyst at SANS, Ritesh Agrawal, CEO and Co-founder at Airgap, Bill Franklin, VP Business Development at Threat Blocker, and Nick Hunter, Technical Product Marketing Manager at Corelight. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the Q&A window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to our presenters.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carol. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Very, very excited to have everyone here for our final 2022 SANS Protects series. I think this is our final one in the series that we set out for. So I'm very happy to be delivering this today. And we've got quite the lineup here with us as well. As with all of our other Protects webcasts, I'm going to take the first half or so and go over kind of what we wanted to cover in this paper, what we wanted to talk about, the things that we stress, the reasons why we stress them. And then the latter half, we'll get into our panel discussion where I'm going to ask Ritesh, Bill, and Nick to join me on camera, and we will get into it then. But other than that, again, really looking forward to it. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Matt, as Carol introduced me a little bit earlier. Everyone, do a lot of work with the SANS Analyst Program, and very, very happy to be bringing this series, bringing this content to us as well. I'm going to start off again for our final one, discussing really quickly what the purpose of our SANS Protect series is for this year. And then we're going to get right into what our topic is for this this session. That is the enterprise network, meaning the wires, the packet transfers, the ports, the things that connect all of our devices together. We've done some of our SANS Protect series before on enterprise email, on endpoints, on web applications. Well, now we're going to look at kind of the intricate DNA that connects all of these parts together and allows for packets to actually flow from one place to another and allows for these things to be accessible and so on and so forth. So with that, we'll cover some of the threats that we've examined to the enterprise network. We're then going to get into some of the protections that can be deployed into place. And then finally, like I said, our last half, we'll wrap up with our panel discussion. So in the spirit of that panel discussion, I want to remind everyone the Q&A window is wide open. So please, 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 if you're on Zoom, go ahead and use that Q&A window as we talk about things. I know the other folks on this panel would love to be proven wrong or told, hey, it's different for me, or I do this, or I do that, or here's why that doesn't work, or here's why that's the best solution I've ever heard of, things like that. We really, really want to get the audience involved. So by all means, everyone, as we're going through this, if you've got some questions or things to bring up, feel free to use that question and answer window, and we'll happily rope that into our discussion as well. With that said, I want to jump in really quickly and talk about what our SANS Protect series is meant to be. This is a series of papers we put together that are meant to focus on the types of assets that organizations have inside of their environment. And we wanted to use this to bring attention to threats and then corresponding mitigations as well. We wanted to do this for a handful of reasons. Number one, a lot of times, a lot of content that we write, nothing wrong with this whatsoever, but a lot of content we write may focus on one particular type of asset or a niche part of a particular type of asset. How to defend against code injection at your endpoints or something like that. It's a very, very niche need that certainly needs all the research we can put around it. We wanted to back away from some of that a little bit and say, let's just talk about threats to endpoints in general as opposed to specific exploits. Well, in this case, we're obviously focusing on the network. As I mentioned earlier, we focused on email. We've talked about endpoints. We've talked about web applications. We want to focus on types of assets. There's a couple of goals here. The first is to bring our attendees' attention to some of the latest threats and mitigations. But we also want to have this serve as a really good platform for some of you out there who may be newer to an organization or just building or starting a security program, or you've got a security program and you're just not really sure what to focus on right now. You may be kind of like, Matt, I've got this massive enterprise sprawl, this huge network. I don't even know where to begin from a defense perspective. I'm not even sure what I should start tackling first. I think we've put together a really good series of starter points we could go after. But the other thing we wanted to do as well is approach some of the biggest threats out there from a high level perspective, meaning there are some pretty advanced attacks out there that can really be mitigated or sometimes even prevented by simply implementing some really simple defenses. And we'll talk about some of those as we get deeper into our content here. But that's the goal of the Protect series. So if you're watching this, take some of the things that we talk about, take some of the insight and thoughts from our panel, apply them against your own environment, look for some similarities and look for some differences, look for some areas where you might have gaps in detection, or you might have some overlap in detection and visibility in response capabilities. Use all of that knowledge to your advantage and use this as a chance to, again, kind of streamline a lot of those opportunities. All right. So with that, we'll go right into the network, or the threats to enterprise networks. And the first one I had to pick on, the first one that we detailed, was the threat of ransomware. And I did this for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it is one of the biggest threats out there that's keeping C-suites all the way down to junior level security analysts up at a daily basis, keeping us losing sleep at night, keeping everyone worried about what's going to happen. Ransomware groups are really, really changing their tactics. We've now got this multi-billion-dollar industry with multiple players and different steps and group names and changing economics and all sorts of things. Ransomware is just an absolute behemoth. We've got to find ways to deal with it. But from a network perspective, ransomware is largely successful. Now, we could get into the account side of things. I won't. I'm going to stick with the network. But I'm going to say ransomware is largely effective or largely successful because of an ability to move around a network inside of an enterprise, an ability to utilize the network to discover different systems, identify key parts of an environment, so on and so forth. And then we're going to address that as one of our major threats here. I dropped in a little diagram. This is also relevant or reflected in the paper as well, to talk about how the network plays an intricate part. And I'm really in this diagram here looking at all the little arrows and the lines in between the different parts of our fake mock network, if you will. And what I really want to focus on is how the network is very, very capable or very enabling, if you will, for adversaries to start at that one victim user and then quickly hop their way across to workstations, workstation groups, different parts of the environment, access different types of servers, go after the target servers, the things they want to encrypt, the data they want to delete and whatnot. This is really an all-encompassing threat that includes the entire network. And depending just how large the attack is, just how big the ransom attack actually is, you may end up having a point where, the network was really the only way for an adversary to move laterally and take advantage of as many or compromise as many systems as they did. So we want to call it out as kind of those, like, guess what? When it comes to ransomware, every single part of the environment is involved. But I think there's a really good opportunity, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I think there's a really good opportunity for detection here. The louder a particular type of attack is, I think the more opportunity we have to detect it, to potentially mitigate and prevent it. But that's the first one we called out. Again, I dropped a couple of other little kind of call outs in here going through the network, the various steps there, but just understanding that a flat network, and we're going to talk about this one in just a second, a network that adversaries can easily move through is going to contribute very, very highly to their success rate. Now, continue on with ransomware. As I mentioned, discovery is a critical component of ransomware, and this communication is necessary. It enables the threat to happen. The second high-level enterprise network threat that we called out here is perimeter devices. Now, I called this out very, very loosely. I kept it loose because I think, first off, there's a further discussion to happen here. We've actually got a lot of content coming out at SANS right now that talks about things like zero trust and SASE implementations, edge-based devices or hosted edge devices and things like that. But unfortunately, a lot of organizations out there still do have those perimeter or edge devices that are still internet facing to just help facilitate business operations and things like that. It's really great. And this is a little bit of a tough position to be in. It's really great as a security industry to talk about how great the concept of zero trust is, or how great the idea of a SASE model is. But until someone's fully migrated over to how great something is, we've got to deal with their enterprise the way that it is. And I think I find, whereas a lot of discussions are kind of like zero trust versus VPN,